This is Jack Posobiec reporting live from Munich, Germany, the Munich Security Conference, where Vice President J.D. Vance just delivered a fire burner speech dissenting against the EU leadership here on the European continent. J.D. Vance came out swinging, saying that the main threat to Europe is not Russia, it is not China, but it was in fact the abandonment of traditional European values, and the main urgency was about mass migration, the open borders spectacle that has led to multiple attacks on the European homeland, including an attack at the Munich Security Conference itself on the very day that it began, an Afghan migrant driving into a crowd of German citizens, killing at least one. He directly, J.D. Vance, blamed these attacks and blamed this on the policies of mass migration pushed deliberately by the European leaders. He also excoriated Europe for continuing to censor and even criminalize free speech and free expression, giving multiple examples of this, including the arrest and imprisonment of a man in the UK for praying outside of an abortion clinic. J.D. Vance then held a bilateral summit with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. All eyes were on this summit after Pete Hegseth's speech to NATO, talking about future membership for Ukraine, and, of course, from J.D. Vance's speech itself. Scott Bessent had traveled to Ukraine earlier this week, which we exclusively reported on at Human Events Daily, with the mineral treaty that President Trump and Zelensky had discussed. That treaty was not signed at the meeting there in Kiev. President Zelensky told Bessent at the meeting that he would review it within 2 days and then bring it back to the Munich Security Conference to potentially see if there would be a signing. As of this report, it does not appear that Zelensky has signed the mineral deal that was discussed very publicly by President Trump and by J.D. Vance and presented to him by Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury. It remains to be seen what Zelensky is asking for. In Kiev, we reported exclusively on the ground from Human Events that Zelensky was asking for a security agreement and potentially more material aid to the Ukrainian state in their fight against Russia to provide for the ability to wind things down as well as for a lasting peace. The Washington Post is also reporting that multiple members of the U.S. congressional delegation, senators who are here in Munich, presented Zelensky with essentially the same document asking him to sign regarding the minerals. Zelensky, according to the Washington Post, politely declined. All of this goes to show that the entire European delegation here to Europe has not ended with a direct deal between the U.S. and Zelensky. Instead, President Trump's envoys, as we have discussed all week, Secretary Scott Bessent, Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Vice President Vance, as well as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who also participated in the meeting between Vance and Zelensky, have led to a sea change in opinion and a sea change in the directionality of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, a way in which President Trump personally came in and stated that he is now conducting one-on-one negotiations with President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. What this means is that NATO, of course, is very, very upset. The leaders of the European nations are very upset. One European leader, defense minister of Germany, coming out in response to J.D. Vance's speech and even said that its speech itself was completely inappropriate, while J.D. Vance is still here in Germany. This is a shock to the European allies, but it shouldn't come as a shock because President Trump and J.D. Vance stated unequivocally many times that they viewed that Europe needs to shoulder their burden for this conflict. And if they wanted it to continue, that it would be done on a shared price value, that the United States would no longer be delivering the blank check for all European security, certainly not for the Ukraine war. President Trump campaigned on peace, and putting an end to the war is the first way to get there on the European continent. J.D. Vance as well coming out and saying that he was not looking for a short peace, but was in fact looking for a comprehensive peace deal to not only secure the end of the Ukraine war, but also a lasting peace for the European continent. President Trump's envoys have been here this entire week, as well as your humble host, Jack Posobiec, for Human Events Daily,